Welcome to Friendeavor, the podcast, the weekly podcast where we explore the highs and lows of friendship with your hosts, Danielle and Kayla.
As we journey through life, our friendships often evolve and change, ebb and flow, and sometimes even come to an end. Danielle and I are lifelong advocates for the power of friendship, and we are here to guide all of us through the many challenges and joys that come with building and maintaining strong, meaningful connections with those around us.
Join us each week as we deep dive into the intricacies of friendship, from navigating conflicts to fostering new relationships and everything in between. With insightful interviews, personal anecdotes, and expert advice, Friendeavor is the perfect podcast for anyone looking to strengthen their bonds with the people they love.
So, whether you are on the go, taking care of chores, or just settling in, get ready to explore the world of friendship on Friendeavor, the podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Friendeavor. I'm your host, Danielle, with one of my most anticipated interviews, probably since the inception. Pauline, thank you so much for being on Friendeavor.
It's an absolute honor. I've been waiting for this moment because if there's one topic I could go on and on about, and I told you this when you reached out, it's friends. Like, oh my goodness, I love it. Every friend that I make, I talk to about being, I don't know, it's a great topic. I just love it.
Yeah, and you learn from everyone that you meet.
It's so true.
So there's a little piece of you that is part of some interaction that you've had with somebody else. So let's kick it off. Tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, all that good stuff.
Well, I am originally from the future 51st state of the United States.
I love
kidding.
that.
I rebuke that. I'm from Canada, and I was born and raised there. And I went to Truth Church of Calgary there for years and years, for my whole life, essentially. And my pastor, Bishop, was Bishop King, and my pastor before I left was Pastor Douglas Walker. And I now live in Durham, North Carolina, under the ministry of the Urshins, and I am absolutely loving it here. So I've been here for just over a year, and I moved here because I got married to my husband, Pauline Beckwith.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That is so exciting. I've had a few different interviews here on the channel, and most of them have been about transition and moving to a new place. So I thought we would start there because, moving to a new place and starting a new chapter can be overwhelming. How did your relationships, both the ones that you had in Canada and the ones that you made in North Carolina through visiting, or however, maybe you had another connection from a different church or something, how did those relationships help you settle into this new life, this new chapter?
I definitely, to start, I would say my friendships from back home haven't changed other than, the frequency, getting to see them at service, or just on downtime, or even just like ministering together, being involved in the church and whatnot. I think like most of my friends, obviously, we try to keep in touch, via text message, phone calls, FaceTime, Instagram, sending those little, what is that term called? Is it not? What is it? Kind of like giving little gifts and those, like sending little reels, that's a good way to keep touch. I do that.
This made me think of you, and so you just send them all the time.
Yeah.
I still live with my friends like locally, and we do that 20,000 times a day. So it is very effective.
So I feel bad because, they're probably like, dear Lord, Pauline sent me 20 reels, and I'm like, it's because I miss you. I'm sorry.
It's because I love you.
It's because I love you. And I mean, I don't even want to start naming people because I know I'm going to forget someone. But I mean, my heart is in Calgary via my friends and my family, obviously.
Sure.
But I miss them so bad. And so, I try to do that. And, we're like, which conferences are you going to? When you coming home? And then there's been a few that have come to visit me, which I'm really thankful for. So that's been really great. It's just been like an adaptation situation, kind of like realizing that this is now reality, and you don't see those faces as often. So you try to figure out times to make it work. And then on the flip side here, I've been so blessed to have made, I could cry thinking about it, and I won't because I'm going to control myself, but I've had
safe space.
Anyway, so I've been able to meet some incredibly lovely people here at the
Hmm.
church. And I mean, some of the best humans I've met to this day, like genuinely. I won't say genuinely or literally very much this
I
this
should have a
time.
tally like in the corner,
Oh my,
genuinely, literally.
don't, don't. Oh my
Go
word,
on.
it'll be like 302 times. Oh my word. Anyway, so I've just met some real people who are kind, who are selfless, who for some reason relate to me, who for some reason want to be my friend. And I'm
Because
just,
you are one of the most relatable people on the planet. And I'm not going to get ahead of myself, but we're going to get there.
so maybe relatable, but I don't know why kind people are attracted to me. Because sometimes I'm
Oh.
not always so sweet. A little more on the sour end of the spectrum. But
No.
I've just, yeah, there's a handful of people here that I just treasure so deeply. And one person I will mention, just because it is a person that is originally from Sacramento, is Faith Richardson, and she has also been like an
Oh, she's
anchor
such
for
a
me here.
sweetheart.
Her and I have like, really connected, and um we've just had a great connection, and we
I
relate
love
on
that.
so many different levels, so it's been really nice. And she moved around the same time I did, so a lot
Yes.
of the
Yeah.
things that she deals with I deal with, and vice versa, so
Hmm.
it's been really nice. Yeah.
Yeah. You're going through this new season together in a way that not
Yes.
a lot of people at that exact same pacing
Yes.
could recognize. So yeah, that's really awesome. So this happens a lot, especially in the apostolic Pentecostal movement, is that, people relocate due to marriage. What advice would you give someone who is recently relocated or is going to be relocating this year? Wedding season's coming up, and they're trying to build new friendships. They're trying to fit in. They're trying to find their place. What do you think?
Well, I think that it's so good to touch on this type of topic, because it's a tough topic to talk about, because a lot of it has to do with submission.
Mm, say
And
it
a lot
again.
of
My God.
people, some people don't love this topic, because in this day and age with, feminism and so on, it's so pushed to kind of go against the grain and do whatever you
Yeah.
want and don't let no man do blah, 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 blah. I do think, now, I'm not saying it's biblical, but I do think that, you know, there are situations where yes, the male will follow the female just because it makes more sense for that couple. But
Hmm.
in the sense, a lot of times, more often than not, the ladies are following the men,
Yes.
and it is a huge thing that the ladies end up having to take on.
Hmm.
And so I think and I want to clarify too, women that have their husbands follow them to where they live, that's not them not being submissive. Like I said, there's scenarios that it just makes
Right.
more sense to have it flipped, whether
Yeah.
that be career or church or so on.
Hmm.
In my situation, I knew that it from day one, and it broke my heart, because from day one I knew that I was going to move to Durham
Hmm.
for a few reasons. But and this kind of gets more into like the like relationship between husband and wife, as opposed to friendships and so on.
Sure.
So I feel like, yeah, number one, it's a submission thing, but my biggest advice to someone that's moving would be to have an open mind and an open heart, because a lot of times what happens, and I've seen this, whether that be people coming to our church, or friends that have to do a big move, and I hear how they feel and what,
Hmm.
and a lot of it is, well, it's not home. Well, it's not my friends, it's his friends. Well,
Oof. Yeah.
it's not this, it's not that, it's not. So you kind of tend to go in with a closed mind and a closed, you already are expecting to be disappointed,
Yeah.
and you allow yourself to be disappointed because you went in with that mindset.
Sure.
And so I will say for myself, I was so grateful to have had many an opportunity to travel here and meet people while I was dating Leighton, while we were engaged and all of that, and kind of leading
Hmm.
up to our wedding. I made some wonderful connections with some people. Um, and it made me feel hopeful for when I did move here. So I would say, and even the music is different, whether that's bad or good. And that's especially a huge point when you're involved in that ministry,
Mm-hmm.
which, as you know, I am. And
Yeah.
so, kind of just adapting to a new set of rules, a new set of circumstances, a new set of order, and so on.
New style
A new
potentially.
style, yeah. And so kind of just going into it with an open mind and an open heart, I think is the number one thing. Just because, like I said, if you go in with a kind of like expecting to be annoyed or disappointed or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
then you tend to kind of head
It's
in that
fulfillment,
direction. Yeah, absolutely,
self-fulfilling.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of
Manifestation.
like how they say, um, uh, I use this for like a lot of different things in my life. It's kind of fake it till you make it. Like, in the sense of like,
I feel that.
I might not feel wonderful about this right now, but I'm going to try my best to change my mind into feeling like I'm okay with it. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, until I'm okay
100%.
with it.
Yeah. Yeah, because that transition is not just a transition of man and wife. It's a transition of almost in your case, literally
Oh,
culture.
yes.
You moved to a different country. And so I would imagine even though we are, the neighbors that are most similar as far as like a lot of countries go, you still have got not just a cultural of like going to a new church, you have a different country, you have a different region of the
Hmm.
country, toward the south. It's just different. Things are just different. Like if someone from the Northeast moves to California, they have different things they have to experience. So not only you have
Oh,
to
yeah.
navigate building your new life with your husband, you've got all these other things that you have to take into consideration.
Totally. Absolutely. The
So,
biggest thing, oh, sorry.
oh
The
no, go
big,
ahead.
the biggest thing I would say culturally is, um, Calgary people are very polite, but it's kind of like surface level. It's very
Mm,
much like, and there's, to me, that's what I know. It's what I like.
hmm.
So it's like, hello, how are you? Great, wonderful. And then you move on. Even at church, like people are always very friendly, but they're not gonna deep dive into your life. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Whereas where I am, and I'm not saying anything bad, it's just different. Don't do It's just different. It is. And so
Yeah.
from someone who's used to, you know, people kind of being more like, all right
People
with you
being
having your
Canadians.
privacy and all right with you having your space. People here are like, do you have a dog? What's his name? Like, just like it's like a lot of questions and a lot. And
Right.
so now here, that's just the polite thing to do. If
Hmm.
if I don't ask you a trillion questions, then I was being rude. Do you know what I mean?
Then you don't care about me as an individual. You don't
Yeah.
want to learn about me. Yeah.
Whereas here, from the Canadian country, I'm kind of like, whoa. Do you know what I mean? So that was
Yeah.
also something I had to adapt to, like big time. And
Yeah.
I'm a work in progress. I'm a work in
You know what?
progress.
Give yourself some grace. You've only been there for like a year, so
That's true. That is true.
yeah.
It's
Well,
funny.
that's awesome. All right, so bridging that gap between you were talking about ministry, let's move into building and strengthening relationships. You know so many people, and I've witnessed this in the years that we've been friends. Like we've been at conferences and I will be talking to you or we'll be walking down the hallway. Someone you don't even know will stop you. I've witnessed this multiple times with you and tell you like how amazing you are, which is true, and how much you've like inspired them and whatever, which is also true. But that's got to be like interesting. Like how like you're so gracious and everything, but I've never one time witnessed you be not gracious when someone has done that to you. So
Oh, wow.
congratulations.
Thank you,
You're
Jesus.
doing great.
I
Yeah.
don't think everyone could say that.
Every time that I've been with you,
Okay.
I can say that.
Okay.
But getting to the point of so many people, so many of them are well known through your vocal talent. You've connected with a lot of people. So what is your approach to building genuine connection, genuine friendship, outside of just time spent together in a studio or whatever? What's your approach to people who might even be intimidating to meet? Like someone could come up to you and think that you are intimidating because of your talent, your ability, whatever, but you want to make them feel at ease. How would you want someone to do that for you as well?
Wow. So first of all, I guess that's a
It
multi-faceted
is. And
question.
I
So
just
the
slapped it all on
no,
you,
you're
so
fine. You're fine.
break it down in
So
your
the
time.
first one, kind of the first one would be, how do I build genuine connections? Is that
Yes. Genuine
so?
connections with people who might seem intimidating or seem difficult, not difficult, but like yeah, you just know a lot of people, right?
I
And you
do.
connect. Yeah.
So I guess, to start, I would say I've always been as real as I can be. Um, there's a time and a place for like different sides of you. So it's not
Right.
that you're being fake in front of someone. It's maybe you're reserving certain things in front of a certain group of people. I've actually met people who are one personality in front of this group and a different personality in front of that group.
Wow.
That's different.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference between me being my big old silly self in
Right.
front of my friends that I'm super comfortable with, and me kind of reserving that a little bit in front of people
Yeah.
that I might not know as much. So I think I've prided myself over the years on being as real as I can be. Because
Mm-hmm.
one thing I cannot stand in other people is any ounce of fakeness,
Mm.
any ounce of
Preach.
two-facedness.
Can't handle it.
Oftentimes I want nothing to do with you. And I'm not trying to be mean. That might sound harsh, but if I detect any fakeness, I'll be like very surface level. Hi,
Yeah.
oh, nice to see you,
For good
and move
reason.
on. Because, and sometimes those are the people that, might want to have a connection and might want to, but I think that's where a boundary needs to be put up. Um, so going back to just the connection thing, I think for me, what I found successful is being myself. And that weeds out the people.
Mm-hmm.
Being yourself, if someone doesn't like what you bring, they're gonna weed themselves out by going, I'm
That's
not a
true.
fan of her. They're gonna go and they're gonna be like, and you're gonna be like, okay, that person left for a reason or doesn't talk to me for a reason, and that's okay. Clearly, I don't. They're not gonna relate to me. They aren't going to understand where I'm coming from ever. So that's
Mm-hmm.
okay. Not everyone is going to like you. And let me tell you, when I was 19 years old and I realized that not everyone liked me for the very first time ever, when someone actually said, Pauline, so and so said they do not like you, I literally thought, take me, Lord. Like, I was like, what? What have I done? Like, it was the most shocking realization of my life. I'm not joking. Like, an adult, like a grown person, told this,
No.
my friend, that they could
No.
not stand me. And I remember being like, it took me over 2 or 3 months to get, I'm not joking. It took
That
me
is
like two.
horrifying. But can I tell you the reason I'm also laughing so hard is because I think I was 19 too when I had that revelation. I was like,
It's, how dare
it's not
they?
that I'm a jerk. It's not that whatever. It's like it's just that, you know, you might be the sweetest peach on the tree, but not
Sure.
everyone likes peaches.
Yeah.
Just
It does, and that's the thing. I've seen it time and time again. Like, I've actually, the nicest people are often not liked because
yeah,
they're so nice.
yeah,
I've seen it. They're like, oh, she's just so, she comes across fake. And I'm like, no, no, this person's like actually a nice person. And they're
yeah,
like, no, I think she's putting it on. And you're like, no, they're nice. And you need to get over it because you're not
yeah.
nice. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
for anybody who's listening right now who feels like they struggle with being fake or they're not sure how to deal with someone being fake, we did an episode a few months ago about fake people. It's
mm,
called Fake People, so go give that a listen after this one.
there
Don't
you go.
don't don't turn that dial yet, people, because this is
Uh-uh.
just getting good.
That's
But
so funny.
yeah, that's really important to know is that the realness factor is what's going to create opportunity for you to become friends with people, and it's what's going to keep you friends throughout the years.
I think so. So far it's not failed me. And kind of going to like the whole into the vein of meeting people that might be intimidating or so on. I feel like overall people, um, I'm never super, super nervous to meet anybody, if that makes sense.
Mm.
There's a certain level of like, oh my goodness, I need to act real proper maybe around this person, or need to like dial myself back
That's
maybe,
me at no
or
limits. I'm like on my
be
best
on my best
behavior there.
behavior,
Yeah.
but never like a, oh, I need to go meet that person because they're gonna take me places, and I need to have that connection. Like I'm never, that to me then feels a little bit too much like an ulterior motive,
Mm.
and I don't like that.
Yeah.
Um, every person, listen, every friendship, every person that I've come across in my life, I know has been God ordained. I really do. And there's people that are good and bad that I do believe are God ordained, because those bad people are the people that put you through a trial or a situation. It's to make you learn something.
Hmm.
Everything happens for a reason.
I believe that.
I know some people don't believe that, but I really do believe that, because people think, why do I go through bad things? Why do I go through struggles, heartaches, and pain? It's like, it's to make your tool belt filled with all these tools that you can then
Yeah.
pull out later on in life and go, okay, that's why I went through this, so that I could handle this a little bit better, or so that I could help someone else deal with this similar situation.
Yeah.
And so I guess, I don't ever try to, maybe I'm the wrong person to ask that question to, but I've never quite like prepared myself to meet somebody, or, um, yeah, I'm just me.
Yeah. And that's I can relate to the person who might feel intimidated because, you know, 10, 15 years ago, I felt like I was a nobody.
Mm.
Not that I'm somebody now, but the
Yeah,
self-perception
you are.
of not that
Yeah, you
it was
are.
a matter of self-perception, right? Like
Yes.
I don't have anything to offer. I'm not
Mm,
from some certain family with recognition. At one point, I was not from a church with any type of recognition. So who am
mm.
I? And I remember seeing people sing at conferences or whatever and be like, wow, what would it be like to be like that person or whatever? And then suddenly it's like I woke up and I was on the platform too, and I got up there and I realized this is just a ministry. This is not a platform
Yeah.
for self. This is not someone shining a spotlight on me. This is a door that God opened, and it's up to me whether I choose to apply myself and walk through it. You
Mm.
know? And so for people out there who are listening, who you feel intimidated or you feel like you're not going to get anywhere, or you're like, oh wow, I see how this person gets these opportunities, keep applying yourself to whatever you're doing and allow God, that old phrase, to unfold the rose.
Hallelujah.
Ma, ma, won't he do it?
Go ahead, sing it.
Anyways, just a side note, Pauline is besties with my childhood hero, and one of these days I will be too, God willing.
Listen,
God willing.
I believe it. You know what?
I
We
believe
won't
it.
even say it, so that
We're not going to say it.
we're gonna fulfill it though. We're gonna make
It
it happen.
God is going to open these doors.
My
I already made a
amen.
fool of myself in front of her once, and I will not do it again. She'll forget though. That was back in October, so it doesn't matter.
Oh Lord. I will say, going back to, so, I didn't even come, sorry, I didn't even try to see it from your perspective, I guess, because that's actually a good point. With the feeling like you're, maybe not somebody, or,
Hmm.
so on. I Two things I'll say to that. Number one is, I'm also a nobody in that sense. Like I come from a broken marriage, from a mom who held on, and that's why I'm here today. Thank God, right?
Hmm.
Tumultuous household. And I think, people have assumptions about me. And that's okay, because I have assumptions about people too. That's just what we do as
Sure.
humans. We
Yeah.
look at
Yeah.
people and we assume.
Hmm.
Um, and I think there's a lot that God's brought me from, that God's
Yeah.
kept me from. And for some reason, he saw it fit to see this little ragamuffin become someone that is used. And I'm very grateful for that. And I don't for any, sorry, I don't at all take that for granted, is what I'm trying to
Hmm.
say. Because I really do know that it's a gift, and to be used. Not that I have a gift, but it's a gift to be used.
Yeah.
And in any facet,
100%.
it doesn't have to be on the platform. Anything that you can do for the kingdom is a gift.
I agree.
So that's number one. Number two, I would say I'm a little bit on the older end. I'm gonna be grown this year.
Stop it.
Fully grown. March 15th. I'm
March
turning
15th.
30.
I was just about to say, you beat me to it. March 15th.
You're a March baby too.
I'm a
On
March
March
baby.
15th, I'm gonna be 34. I'm a grown lady. And so the one thing I would say is as time goes on, you kind of just go, because there are insecurities as you grow. I remember one year going to peak and being like, oh, I hadn't gone for like 2 or 3 years. And then I went to peak and I was like, oh my gosh, what if nobody talks to me? What if I don't have friends? What if? And I was probably, at the time, I would have been probably like 21 or something. And I was like, oh my goodness, what if no one remembers me? What if I don't have friends? What if? And then you go and people are like, oh, hey, how's it going? Or people that you don't know go, hi, my name is, and you go, oh, okay, this isn't as scary. So as
Yeah.
time goes on, when you get to the ripe old age of 34, I'm 33 right now.
You're
34,
33, bro. You're 33. It's your
33.
Jesus year still.
That's right.
And you made
When you
it. You're
get
almost there. No crucifixion for you.
not yet, not yet. When you get to my age, you kind of go, as the years go on, you go, okay, this is who I am. This is what it is. And this is, don't get me wrong, you still have insecurities, but you kind of maybe adapt to them a little bit better.
Yeah.
You kind of like deal with them differently. And then you just go, this is who I am. And I think
Yeah.
that's what I mean when I try to just be as real as I can. When I meet people, I try to be as honest as I can and
Yeah.
so on. So,
You know that like perception of like, oh, old ladies, they just don't care. They don't care about anything. They just live their life. Turns out becoming an old lady is I'm gonna be 29 in March. I'm getting into my last year of my
baby
20s.
girl,
Turns out that old lady mentality kicks in when you're 28.
stop. You're so
Because I am
ridiculous.
just like, the way people think about you or the way you whatever,
Yeah,
care. You just
it's
don't
so
care.
true.
You want to live your life, you want to please God, and you want to try to make a life for yourself.
Have a
Like
good
that's what
time
you
while you're
want.
doing it. Enjoy your life when you're doing it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
100%.
Wait, are you turning 29 on the 29th this year?
I am.
It's
It's
her
my
golden
golden.
birthday. Oh my
It is my
goodness.
golden.
Big deal.
I waited 29 years for my
You
golden birthday.
waited.
That's
Yes.
almost the longest you have to wait. But yeah,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Just going back to what you mentioned about me knowing a lot of people,
Hmm.
it does feel like that sometimes, and then it doesn't, which is funny because you're not the first person that said that. They're like, Pauline, like and not to, this sounds so stupid, but like people will be like, why do you know so many people? And I guess I don't, yes, I do, but I don't at the same time. And then I don't know, it's kind of funny. But the main reason I would say it is because I've been able to do quite a bit of traveling. And also I've been to a lot of different conferences.
Yeah.
And I know sometimes when you come from a smaller church, where maybe your youth group isn't very big, or there was a period of time for me where a lot of my peers had left church, at a really detrimental age. I feel like it was a very
Hmm.
crucial time for me, and I kind of needed those connections and those friendships in order to succeed with my walk with God. I think I was so fortunate to be able to go to No Limits, to go to Summit in Spokane, to go to Peak. And
Hmm.
then what would happen is I'm making these little friendships everywhere.
Yeah.
And then they'd be, if one of them was like a really, really good connection or like a kindred spirit, I would make a connection so good that they'd be like, you need to come visit me. Like, and we would make it happen. We would fulfill
Yeah.
it. And then that only deepens the relationship. And that goes back to what you were saying about how friendships are based off of, what was it, time, and what was it?
Desire to spend time and actually time spent because
There you
like
go.
you spend time with your coworkers, but if you don't desire to spend time with them, you're not going to develop a friendship out of them.
Exactly.
However, between actually time spent and the desire to spend time with people, that's how the friendship pyramid, that's how those tiers, in my mind, I mean, I developed the matrix, so people could disagree with that, but
Of
that's
course.
that's my thought process
But
behind
hey,
it.
it's a solid concept. Hasn't filled you yet. But yeah, I would say, to someone who feels like, man, there's no one around, or, um, maybe there's no one to make connections with, I would
Hmm.
highly, if you're able to if you have the finances, or if you can choose at least one conference to go to, I would highly recommend going to conferences and trying to meet
Yeah.
people, because it's just such a blessing. Not only are you
Yeah.
getting the word of God, but you're also building these really strong connections and friendships with people.
I totally agree. And sometimes it's a matter of priority, people
Hmm.
prioritizing to spend their money that way. Some people are like, "Oh, I don't know how." My family gets this question all the time. All the time. How do you guys travel so much? Why do you travel so much? How can you afford
Mm,
it? We are not top of the mountain financially, people. There is I mean, we got a lot of hills to climb, but it's a matter of prioritizing how you spend your time and how you spend your money and your energy.
yeah,
And if you want to go and meet people at conferences and be exposed to opportunities that, come with that kind of thing, like being involved or whatever, that's prioritizing. That might
it's
be,
prioritizing.
yeah, instead of setting the money towards the next technology thing, which makes me sound like such an old person, but I didn't want to say them video games. So whatever you typically spend your money on,
Yeah.
redirect it for a year if that is your priority of wanting
Hmm.
to connect and wanting to make friends. But you don't need to look at someone with a dour expression and be like, they spend all their time on
Like
a plane,
with
they spend all their
disdain
money.
almost.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
kind of crazy.
it's so funny you say that, because I remember there was one person in particular who would always ask me that question, and they weren't from my church actually, which is funny. But it was someone from a neighboring church who'd be like, "How are you doing all of this traveling?" And I was like, "I don't do anything when I'm at home. Like, I work, and then
Yeah,
I sometimes hang out at the church with the people that I do more work with. And then
yeah,
we might go and get a coffee after. But I'm not going out on the town at home all the time. It just
hmm,
wasn't that way when I was in Calgary.
yeah,
That was what I kind of like what you said, you prioritize these things. And so I would be like, all right, I have to go to this conference to see my friends and spend time with them. And quite frankly, over the years, things got cheaper because you stay with your friends. They
yeah,
absolutely get mad at you at the idea of getting a rental car. They're
hmm,
like, don't
yeah,
you dare.
yeah,
So, really, you're spending your money on your food and on any extra expenses, but,
yeah,
oh, and on your flight, of course. But, like,
yeah.
you know, it's a win
And
win.
but that's like instead of spending, $200 on a shopping trip, you apply it to something else. And I totally
Exactly.
get that. Yeah. And then you really get into the world that people do not understand of airline loyalty
Yep.
miles. And they're like,
Hey,
you put that on a credit card? I'm like, bro, I just went to Europe for basically free on my plane because of my
you
miles.
did.
Yeah, we just went for Christmas.
Oh my goodness. That's
And
amazing.
your girl flew premium economy.
Period. Period.
Tell
Because
me
she
why that
deserves
chair
it.
reclined
Because she
so much.
deserves it.
Uh, I'm a little
Because
bit
she's a
feeling it though.
queen.
Honestly, it was amazing. Would
Oh.
recommend. But yeah, obviously I'm teasing, but yes, it's a matter of priority. So
Absolutely.
small church, big church, whatever church, if you want to make friends, if you want to connect with people, then you will put the time and energy and resources into what you prioritize.
Absolutely.
All right, so we talked a lot about how you just developed over the years and how you've had strong friendships at your home base, if it were your OG stomping grounds, as my mom would say.
Mhm.
Uh, and how would you say that those friendships, so pre-marriage, pre even adulthood to some extent, how have those friendships shaped you um to who you are today? Like we talked about how every person you meet kind of gives you something to develop or learn or whatever. What comes to mind when you think of your growing up years with people?
Oh my word. I mean, you know, having a family that, wasn't your picturesque family. I had to kind of make my own family with my friends, sorry. And I think I do believe that the reason why I am here today and who I am is because of the people that were surrounding me growing up.
Hmm.
Um, People that I considered like a sister, like a brother. I mean, I'm so, 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 so grateful. There's two people that come to mind. It's for Heidi and Travis Lewis. They took me in and they treated me like a sibling. They really did, and it was during the worst time of my life. And also, Lisa Osterbeck is the one that really took me in during a time where all my friends were kind of dropping off. I mean, when I was about 15 years old, a lot of my school friends, we had a church school, and a lot of my school friends left church at that time.
Mm.
And it was a really difficult time. And her cousin Esther kind of took me under their wings. And over the years, they were just wonderful to me. They were like family.
I love that.
Um, and I really do think that, and my mom, obviously my mom was wonderful too, but she worked a lot, and so they were able to kind of guide me and help me during times where my mom may not have been able to help in that regard. And not to say that she was negligent, she wasn't. She had to do what she had to do, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And so I mean, my mom is an anchor in my life as well. Uh, that being said, my friends kept me. They really did. They kept me sane. They kept me laughing. They tried to make me open up. I surely did not, you know, because they could, I think when you see someone that's troubled, you try to, get something out of them. But
Yeah.
with the trauma and not knowing how to deal with it, I would always shut down certain things. In fact, I didn't cry for a very long time. Now, I would pray. Praying and crying are two different things because
Two different things.
I was always able to touch God, maybe not as much as I can now that my relationship with God is better. At the time, I was a bit tumultuous, but I was still able to touch God and still able to,
Yeah.
you know, um, cry in his presence and just be overwhelmed by what I would feel in God's presence. But I remember one time a friend of mine actually texted me, Eva, Eva G. She's in North Little Rock. She texted me out of nowhere. She would do this. It was so funny. She would do this out of nowhere and be like, "I'm praying for you," or she would send me something really deep, and then you know it was out of nowhere, and I'd be like, "Whoa, thank you," and then I wouldn't hear from her for a minute, and then all of a sudden it'd be like deep. Well, one day she sent me this message and said, you don't have to be strong all the time. It's okay to cry.
Not the
L-
Lord speaking through
Let
her.
me tell you, that seems like such a silly thing, right? You're like, okay. So even probably the average person would have been like, okay, bro, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank
Hmm.
you. Like, when I tell you that opened up a floodgate in me, and it was just a text, but I immediately burst into tears and haven't stopped crying since, basically. Because
That's so
when I tell you,
not sense. My God.
it's what
You said you haven't stopped crying since.
I haven't. I'm the most emotional person. It's like I made up for lost time. It's so
Yeah.
bizarre. Like I will cry at the drop of a hat. In fact, I'm surprised I haven't cried in this podcast yet. But it's because I'm breathing in between of my, trying to practice self-control.
Fair. Yeah.
But I might cry. Who knows? But when I tell you, I promise you. And it was something as simple as that. And I feel like that is a small testament of what my friends have been able to do for me over the years is just kind of chip away at the things that I harbored so deep inside of me. And
Yeah.
I think number one would be, yeah, dealing with just things I didn't even know I was dealing with,
Yeah.
trauma wise.
Hmm. And I love that you said her name was Eva. I love
Yeah.
that Eva was sensitive enough to the Holy Ghost to be allowed
Oh,
to be used because not only could someone disregard a message like that, someone could disregard the nudge to send a message like
mm,
that. Like, oh, I don't want to come across as cheesy, or I don't want to try to
yeah.
think that I'm better than her or speak into her life. And people, I think of all ages, ignore nudges from God because of perception of
Oh,
themselves or
yes.
how it's going to be received. That's not to say you should go be a clown and try to speak in everyone's life and think that you are, whatever. You got to be sensitive to the spirit. And I love that your friend was sensitive to the spirit.
Mm.
and helped you get to the point that you needed to be. I mean, you just answered my next question, like a time of a friend helping you become a better person, and that's
Mm,
fantastic. Speaking of a time a friend helped me become a better person, aka you, uh, there was a time, and I don't even know if you remember doing this, but you helped me through a loss of a friendship when I was
mm.
about 19 or 20. Um, you have not cried yet, but I might now. I was at a point in my life that this was the third friendship that I had lost for a similar situation. It was like, and I'm gonna let people read between the lines here when I say lost, like we're in the church and people choose to walk away. Okay. And I didn't know what to do. This was the third one in like 3 or 4 years
Yeah.
that I had lost, and I did not know how to handle it. It was all like a similar starting point for this person, and for all three people. And I was just crushed, and I didn't know what to do. And because we had a mutual connection with the relationship, I called you, and I
Mm.
was sitting on the floor of my bedroom at like 19 years old, crying my eyes out on the phone because I didn't know what to do. And you were so kind and so loving and so gracious. And I think it was like an hour we sat on the phone, you in Canada, me in Sacramento. And I say all that to get to the point of people are still going through that stuff right now.
Oh yeah.
Every single day, every single year, people walk away from God, people lose friendships that are very meaningful and very deep. It doesn't matter the length of the time of the friendship. So sometimes
Mhm.
you meet someone and it feels like you've been friends with them your entire life.
Yes.
When I
Yeah.
first met you, I felt that way. And we lived in different cities then, and you'd come and hang out around Easter time and we'd hang out, and I felt like I'd known you forever. But
Mhm.
regardless of the time of the friendship, people are losing friendships. So, what advice would you give to someone who is going through the loss of a friendship? Not necessarily as a death or something like that, but as a way of the person that you trusted chose to no longer be your friend because of whatever situation.
Oh, I don't. Oh, it's hard because I don't know that I have advice because I haven't always dealt with it the best way. There was a situation where one friend left church, and it was interesting because there was a lot of things that kind of almost distanced this person from me prior to them leaving. Um, they we would hang out all the time, like all the time. And it was like all of a sudden, oh, I'm too busy. Oh, this is here, blah, 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 blah. There was always an excuse. Let's go out to eat. Oh, I can't. I've got to go home. All right. Let's hang out this night. Oh, I can't. I've got to do homework. It was just always something for the longest time. And then it got worse and worse, leading up to the point of them
Right.
deciding to leave. Um, and I remember I actually was in Sacramento. No, I was I was in Calgary still, sorry. And I had gotten a note. I was at work and I walked into work and someone was like, "Hey Pauline, there's somebody left a note here. They came into the coffee shop and said to give this to you when we got a chance." And I said, "Okay." And it was a Starbucks napkin. And there was a like Starbucks, like there's like a label machine and they print out stickers. And so the napkin was folded and then had like one of those stickers on the top. And I remember opening it up, and this person was like, "I'm so sorry to tell you like this, but I've decided to change paths, do different things, and no longer be a part of this thing that all connected us to begin with, which is church.
Right.
Um, I've chosen to go my own way, and I hope that life treats you kind, essentially.
Oh
And
my
I remember
word.
being so devastated because it felt like the biggest slap in the face. Um, to have one of your childhood best friends tell you like that, you know? And I mean, she didn't have to tell me when it came down to it. Like, it almost honestly would have been easier had she not told me at all,
Right.
because then it would have given me an opportunity to be like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And then maybe like even over text or over a phone call to kind of touch base and see where they're at. But no,
Yeah.
they full on just wrote it on like quickly scrawled it on a napkin, and basically what I said, I still have a picture of that note. I don't have the actual note, but I have a picture of it in my phone. I When I tell you it was maybe 4 sentences, and goodbye. Hope life treats you well. I mean, so I then went on to Instagram, and or maybe it was text. I can't remember, one of the two. And I sent them this big old long thing about how disrespected I felt, and how it hurt me. And I know that I said, regardless of your choice, that's totally fine. You make your choices. But I just was so hurt by how it was done,
Oh my
especially
gosh.
because our friendship was so close. And then over time, it kind of, when I say time, I mean, I'm talking a year maybe, where it was gradually like waning. And then all of a sudden I get a napkin, and I was like, what on earth? Um,
Oof.
So I don't think I handled it well myself, to be honest, because I lashed out, and maybe I wasn't disrespectful, but I was probably not very kind in my text message, um, or even maybe very understanding. Um, and I do regret that. That is one of my biggest regrets. So I would say I don't even know what to say, because every situation is so different.
Yeah.
Every time that friendships end like that, I mean, in that specific way, is so different to, say, someone who you have to create a boundary with, who you can no
Yes.
longer be friends with, who you go, hey, I'm not okay with you doing this, and if you continue, then we can't be friends anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so different. Um, and the way that people, leave church is so different.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's hurt, sometimes it's church hurt. How do you deal with that as a friend who doesn't maybe see the same thing that person's been through?
Yeah.
And so I would say, well, the number one thing of how to deal with it is you'd have to, first of all, pray. Prayer is, like you said, kind of being sensitive to that nudge, to those,
Hmm.
um, sometimes you feel like you want to say something, and it feels like it is the Holy Ghost trying to nudge you to say. So maybe try to be prayerful, try to be mindful, and that alone will keep you close to God in those
Yeah.
scenarios where a friend is leaving, and you go, well, what about me? I don't. The answer is not to follow them.
Yeah.
So keeping a very prayerful spirit will not only keep you close to God, but will also hopefully give you the right things to say to that friend.
Hmm.
And then I would say the other thing would be to have open communication with your man of God. You know, if you don't feel like you really know what to do in certain scenarios, you should be seeking counsel, whether that's your youth pastor or your mentor, someone you look up to, or
Hmm.
your pastor or your bishop, kind of looking for that advice, because sometimes your peers are going to do the same things that you do. And so you might not necessarily need their advice. You need someone
Yeah.
who's maybe a little bit
Yeah.
older, who's got some more life under their belt, to look at this specific situation and go, maybe this is what you need to do.
Yeah. Staying close to God can also help you heal
Yes.
from
Oh,
that.
oh my.
That was
There.
the main thing
Mm,
that I was even calling you about, was not that day, was not even so much like how can I stop it? How can I stop from losing
mm-hmm.
this friendship? But what do I do now?
Yeah.
I felt so hurt. And like I said, I don't even know if you remember that phone call, but I just felt so, I didn't know what to do. I was shocked the way I found out. And yeah, I didn't know what to do. And so that was actually what I did. Called someone who was a
Yeah.
little bit older
Yeah.
than me and got some counsel. And I was able to heal. And again,
Mm,
that particular one instance was kind of the tipping point of other ones.
mm,
So while yes, I was very hurt by this instance, there was just so much of that same stuff happening all the time, and I didn't know how to deal with it.
yeah.
And so staying prayed up, staying in touch with people who will be a mentor, be a guide, that is what helps that healing process because you have to get out on the other side of this. If you
Oh
don't,
yeah.
if you allow bitterness or whatever, that's going to end you quicker than
Hmm.
any other decision you can make. So, wow,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
crazy.
And it's one of those things too where bitterness is all based on your state of mind, right? So if you allow that bitterness to creep in and to take over, then it's like a self-fulfilling thing in the sense of you are self-sabotaging
Yeah.
yourself by allowing that to be how you think and how you operate with day-to-day things.
Hmm.
And so kind of going back to that fake it till you make it thing,
Yeah.
um, you know, sometimes you don't want to get over something right away, or sometimes you want to be like, no, I want
You
to
want to
wallow in
harbor it.
self pity. Yeah,
Yeah.
like it's fun. No I'm kidding, it's not fun, but you're like, yes, it feels good to be depressed and sad,
Yeah.
But and you can have your moment of mourning. There's nothing wrong with that, but as long as you get to a point where you go, okay, now I need to move
Yeah.
forward because this is not a good place to be
Hmm.
mentally.
Yeah. That's really what it is you're grieving.
Yeah.
You got to treat it like any other type of grief.
Oh
Physical
yes.
loss of an like, someone actually dies, someone spiritually dies, just loss.
Yeah.
It's a grieving process. All right, my friends, we're going to take a quick break, gather ourselves, and come back to this. So stay tuned. We will be right back. All right, everyone, welcome back. Pauline and I had to just work through some feelings really quickly, but now we're going to take this train up to the glory cloud because
Hallelujah.
I don't know if you guys know this. I would imagine most of you do. Pauline is probably the funniest person on the planet, according to me and several others. But honestly, I love to laugh and I laugh a lot, but the consistency of which I laugh with you when we're together, which unfortunately is not as often as I'd like, just time and space. But yeah, you're hilarious. So that's why we
It's
need to
awesome.
just switch gears and get this back on track. But
Listen,
um,
just a side note, that is the highest compliment anyone could pay me. I don't care about, I promise you, like I tell this to people all the time. You can think all of these things. You could be like, oh, I like your hair or I like your outfit. And I'd be like, thanks. But if you tell me I'm funny,
well, you are because I was
boom, my
thinking
head just like explodes. Like I
when
can't.
I think the most recent time that we like, actually hung out other than just seeing each other at conference was Brett's wedding. We
Yes.
were we were after the reception. I think we'd already sent them off, and we're sitting on the floor in the foyer. The floor. It was unfinished at that point because it was like five
Yes.
years unfinished.
Yep.
And we had a bottle of juice, like sparkling cider, and cake, and we're just sitting on the
Yes.
floor talking about the day, howling, and people are walking around cleaning up. We were not bothered to clean up. I was not bothered to clean up at all. Just eating cake and
And
drinking our
Kara
juice.
had Kara had your friend's baby. Do you
Yes.
remember? And I
Yeah.
think I was like bugging the baby. I
He
think
was
I was like
he's
trying to
so
scare the
sweet.
baby with faces and stuff, which I feel so bad about now. But like, I think that also made me feel so delirious because I'm
It
like,
was yeah.
oh,
You
anyway,
flew in really quickly. It was a long day, but it was so fun. But anyways, that just trying to get this back on the not cry about life
that's
train.
right.
That's what comes to mind when I think of Pauline. I think of hilarious. I think of the stories of when we've been together, and I'm sure you have many instances of your own friendships of over the years of. just howling laughing when he says
Listen, those
something.
are the best moments where, and we talked about this a little earlier before we started the call, but sometimes those stories are like they are not funny to anyone
Hmm.
else. And it's like you think about it and you talk about it with your friend, and you're like, you're just like
Yeah,
dying laughing, and everyone else is like,
that's stupid.
no, like because
Yeah,
it was stupid. But it's
yeah.
one of those things where you're like so delirious, you're dying laughing. It's just so
Hmm.
good. Laughter is good for the soul. It's
It
just so
is.
good.
It
I love
absolutely
it.
is. And one
Oh.
story that I will tell that hopefully people find funny because it was hilarious is I was visiting Calgary and we were going up to Lake Louise and us and a couple of friends and we get up there and I had not been that cold in like a long time, right? I'm from California and I was born in Michigan, but it's been a long time since I'd been in the winter and we're going up there and we're walking out on the lake and we're freezing, but we're having fun. And then we see like these snowmen, and so we go to add to the snowmen. But the guy who was with us, he was like, "Okay, it's time after you've done all your hard work of building them up, you have to knock them down, right?" So he goes and he runs and he does like this, trying to do this karate like feet first, but he
Like
completely
double
misses.
foot. Yeah.
Just double foot, but he misses and falls straight down. So yes, that is hilarious, but what's even funnier is that I was videoing it because we just knew it was going to be a masterpiece of just
Yes.
snow explosion. And you had your hair down in a braid. When you go and turn to laugh, you're like, "Ah." Your braid goes like a
Because you
whip
did it in slow
around.
motion. Yes,
I
I
did to
remember. Oh
I
my
need to find the
gosh.
video. I
I
need to
still
find the
have
video.
it.
I think I do too.
It's so
Um,
good.
but it was just hilarious because the kick and falling was already funny, but your reaction was even funnier. And the
Oh
braid, like
Lord,
if
mercy.
one person had been around, they would have been decapitated the way that thing came flying around.
Like it was like a whip.
It was.
Whoosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh Lord, those
So
were good
people out
times.
there listening, if you don't laugh with your friends, first of all, get it together. And second of
Get
all,
new friends.
find something to bond about because
Hey, if you
that's
only
what
cry
memories are
all the
built
time
on.
with your friends, get another friend that makes you laugh.
Amen.
Okay.
Say it louder for the
I
people in the
will say
back.
this too. I will say this as a little side note. Sometimes my you got to be careful, and not to go back into the trauma thing, but you got to be careful with humor because sometimes you use it in order to deal with other things, in order
Yeah,
to mask certain things. And so I feel
I hear
like
you.
that's what I have done over the years. Now I feel like I'm in a healthier place mentally and so on, but I do feel like a lot of the times I personally used humor as like a defense mechanism, or even like being quick. Someone would try to be like sly with me, and I would come back so fast, and I was cutthroat, and it was not good. So I've been able to like, tame it down over the
I
years.
shouldn't
And
be laughing, but that is the kind of thing that would send me onto the floor laughing. So, I mean, I'm not really.
I may or may not have said something to one of my friend ushers here the other day. He never smiles, and he was smiling, and I said, "Why are you smiling? Did you say a baby trip or something?" And he was like, "Oh my," and I was like, "My apologies. I That came out much too quick."
Overshot the runway on
I
that
was
one a
like,
little bit.
I said I have to go. Sorry, someone's calling me.
You're like you're holding your phone upside down, like, okay, I gotta go. I gotta call. Mm.
Oh yeah, I did feel kind of bad about that, but
I think that was a good one. I'm gonna have to steal that one. That's hilarious.
uh,
Oh,
but
okay.
anyways,
Where were we? Okay. Um, so yes, we talked a little bit about how you're recently married, new
yes,
location, all that stuff. Congratulations, by the way. I was on
thank
a
you.
bachelorette trip actually, and I said, okay, I have to go, and I went and watched your wedding because I wanted to go to
Aw,
your wedding,
my
but
apologies
I
for the
couldn't make it.
audio. It's awful. It's terrible,
So,
but thank
but
you for
I did
attending.
go and watch it because friends with a Z. But
That's
both
right.
in terms of strengthening existing bonds and making space for new ones. So like his friends becoming your friends and his
Mhm.
married friends becoming your friends. How has your marriage impacted friendships? Like, is there any time that you feel like you've had to set a friendship aside just temporarily because you're in a new relationship? Like, how is has your marriage impacted your friendships in any way?
Well, so yes, big time because of like location. I mean, we talked a
Right.
little bit about that to start. Um, Obviously, the proximity is an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I would say, kind of going back a little bit, I remember growing up and people having like starting to date, getting to know people back home. And they like, so for example, long distance is a different story. But like back home, if two people from our same church were dating, it was
Mm-hmm.
like no one else existed all of a sudden, which like
Yeah.
I don't love. And I remember
Right.
being like so upset when that would happen. And I vowed to myself that when I did start dating someone, that I would try my best to not let it affect my current friendships and that I would not let it affect what was going on around me as much as I possibly could. So that was easy because it was long distance,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But so with the time difference, so Calgary and Durham are 2 hours difference. So I
Is it
would
really only two
sometimes,
hours?
pardon?
It's really only 2 hours? Oh, I didn't
Yeah, it's
realize
only,
it Calgary was
yeah,
that far inland.
yeah. It's an hour in from because we're three
Okay.
hours different. So yeah, it's an hour
That's just a
in.
nerdy thing that did not mean to interrupt your flow for
No,
me
no,
to
you're
nerd out
fine.
about
No,
time
you're
zones.
good. Don't worry. Yeah, we're Mountain Standard, where I'm from, or where I was from. Um, so there were times where like I would try to rush home and FaceTime him to no avail because he'd be like asleep by the time, So there'd be times where I'd have to just be like, I'm just gonna go out with my little pals, my friends at the church, so that I'm not neglecting them either. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Mm-hmm.
so I did try to make an effort to still be connected in that way because of how much I disliked it growing up with my other friends who were dating and
Mm-hmm.
so on. Um, that being said, with like friendships here and friends that he has, honestly, I like most of his friends that he had. Like, I shouldn't say most of his friends. I do like his friends. Like, there's not really anyone that I'm like, we cannot hang around. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and then I think also like to a certain degree, there needs to be like a mutual respect when it comes to like friends of the opposite sex, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
um Obviously we're still going to be friends with the friends that we were before, but maybe checking in with your spouse and making sure that what you're doing is appropriate in their eyes and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
You always want to make
Yeah.
sure that, and people think, oh, but that's controlling or that's that. Well, you know that's called respect,
Yeah.
kind of making sure that that person is okay with how much you're communicating with a certain person
Mm-hmm.
is actually perfectly fine, because
Yeah.
at the end of the day you're the two people that are in that marriage and you're the two
Right.
that are going to try to make it work. So I think that that's something that I've seen other couples do. One thing I will say that is like, oh my word, I'm so grateful for is having been single for so long, you see a lot of things and people through different phases of life, and you learn a
Yeah.
lot from other couples.
Oh,
You learn so much.
amen.
So it's so good because you kind of go into, not that I'm not saying that going into my marriage I'm like I know it all, because like everything
Yeah.
is so different with me and Leighton. um but like there's a lot of things that I'm like, oh, I really respect that those two people do that. Like that's really cool that they do that for each other, or
Mm-hmm.
that they check in with each other about this, or they're always for example, they have Find My Friends and they know where each other's at all the time. Fun fact, I don't have it, but Leighton does. So I know where he is, but he doesn't know where it's a secret. He doesn't need to know where I am. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. I just don't have it. I've never like whatever. But so just stuff like that, checking in and making sure that there's like because he is your best friend and that's
Mm-hmm.
like the person that you have to show the most respect to,
Mm-hmm.
and his opinion is going to mean the most to me at the end of the day. Like
Yeah.
I was talking to him about even compliments. um People can be like, oh, this and this and that, and then at the end of the day, if he compliments me, it means more than any other person's compliment. No offense to anyone,
Mm-hmm.
like,
I understand.
but your person is always gonna be the one that holds the most value to you,
Yeah.
and so because of that, I think it's so important to always make sure that you're aligned with what their preferences are and all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
even when it comes to friendships.
totally. Two things come to mind when you're talking about, first of all, about him, you saying like, oh, there's none of his friends that I say that we don't have to hang out with. I think that we as apostolics are at an advantage. If you think about worldly dating, worldly relationships, especially if they're long distance, when they come together, those groups don't know each other. And then the basis for which someone might say, we don't hang out with him, is because of how stupid they act or whatever,
Yeah,
based off of immorality or whatever. As apostolics, we have the benefit of already being in the body of Christ with these people. So there's not too much that a person in the church can do that would make you cut them off,
right.
right?
There's already that common ground, that common space.
Exactly.
Yeah,
You like automatically have to have some sort of level of respect. Not saying that you have to hang out with every single person in the church, but we're at an advantage, whereas non non-Christians, non-apostolics might have to be like, "Oh yeah, I don't like your friends, like they can't come around the house or whatever because they act like this toward me." Hopefully, for these relationships, these marriages, you already have that connectivity of the body. So I can totally see how you wouldn't have to be like, "You
yeah.
can't be friends
Thank
with them anymore."
God. Yeah,
Yeah.
thankfully. You know,
Yeah. And the other thing about respecting the person, because whether it's a marriage or a friendship, like there's things that the person doesn't want you to do, the person does want you to do. And when Carissa King was our first interview, and she was talking about how our topic was your spouse can't be your only friend. Like you have to have relationships outside of your spouse and friendships, that kind of thing. But she was talking about how if you as a wife or just as a young girl or a single girl, whatever, have a friend who's the opposite sex who is married, you have to be even the more careful about how you present that, just to stay above reproach,
mhm,
just to stay one step ahead of the enemy's tactics, right? And so there
absolutely,
is a friend of mine who is a pastor. That might seem weird to some people that I would have friends who are pastors, but he and his wife and myself are on a group text. We don't text individually
yep,
because I would never do anything to hurt him. He would never do anything to hurt me, but it just stays above reproach. So that is part of like
absolutely,
that bond of strengthening your existing bonds while making space for the new connections that you're entitled to have new connections with it
absolutely.
being as a married person. Um, but yeah, just staying above reproach. Absolutely.
I think that that's so good too because him being in a position of leadership, um, I think that's also setting a good example for his congregation.
Hmm.
Kind of being like, this is what I do. This is what I recommend for you to do as well, if you
Yeah.
ever feel like that's necessary.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just creating healthy relationships
Absolutely.
in the body of Christ. All right, one last thing that I want to get your take on. And then, of course, if you have anything else you'd like to say, we desperately want to hear it. Uh, but what is one thing that you think everyone should do? Like, I'm giving you a microphone with the potential to reach the world right now, because this is going on YouTube and therefore the world
My
can get it. But
goodness.
what is one thing you think that everyone should do to become a better friend to others?
Hmm. I would say to give without expecting anything in return. To give of your time, to give of your love, to give of, because, you know, there was this thing I read one time and it had to do with foster parenting. And I always remember thinking, like, man, why do people foster parent? That's just, I mean, I get why people do, don't get me wrong. But
Mm-hmm.
I think my point was, it's just so heartbreaking. Like, what if you get so attached to this child only for them to get, snatched from you or whatever it is, like, or they go back to their family, or
Yeah, it
they
just
get
doesn't work
adopted
out.
out somewhere else, whatever it is. Like, imagine pouring so much into this child and creating that bond, and then it's just devastating. Um, and then I remember reading this thing where this lady wrote, at first, my mentality was, why would I want to do this? For the same reasons that I just said. And then she said, but then I thought, imagine this child never received love, or never, even if it was for a week, a month, a year. Imagine if they never had that opportunity to feel that. And I'm like, oh my word, imagine a lifetime of never feeling that, as opposed to even that one week, how big of a difference that would have made, how much of an impact that would have made on that person. So
Yeah.
I guess friendships, you could kind of view it in the same way. Um, I think I try to give of my time as much as I can. I try to make a genuine connection by finding something that, like, if I'm meeting someone and I want to make sure that they feel heard, I try to open up the floor on a topic they that we both relate on, and then they feel like, oh, I can open up to her because she understands where I'm coming from. So then I go, well, then tell me about it, and they pour their heart out about, whatever it is, and or even something that they're passionate about, or you know um I think, yes, to give freely of your time and your love. um I know that you have your friendship pyramid, and along with
Hmm.
that, I think I have like a concept of the same idea, like acquaintances and then so on,
Hmm.
but I think also I have another, I don't know what I would call it. I don't have a name for it, but the way I see it is there's friendships that I give and that person takes. There's friendships that I take from and that person just gives freely. And then there's friendships where there's a back and forth.
Hmm.
Right? And those are the
Yeah.
friendships that are the most meaningful because there's always a give and a take,
Hmm.
right? Not to say that there's no value in the other two, but there's like almost like an understanding that I glean from you in this situation,
Hmm.
and maybe it's not always reciprocated, right? For example, um, like a pastor's wife, you know,
Yeah.
they're going to be your friend and they're going to be there to listen to you and they're going to be there to give you advice. You're not necessarily giving them advice.
Right.
Do
Hmm.
you know what I mean? So in
100%.
that situation, it is a friendship, but it's something that you're like constantly kind of gleaning from and
Yeah.
taking and going back to the well and like dipping your bucket in and going, all right, thank you so much.
Hmm.
Whereas maybe a situation where there's someone younger who you're kind of a mentor to, that's
Yeah.
something where you would kind of be pouring out and being there for that person.
Yeah.
And then you have a peer or a mutual where
Yeah.
there's just like this back and forth and back and forth, and that's so beautiful, I think. But I think if you ever go into a situation feeling like, well, I'm not going to do anything because she never does this for me, then that's not
Yeah.
fair. In fact, that's
Mm-mm.
mostly unfair to yourself,
Yeah.
if anything,
You're
because
limiting yourself.
you're limiting yourself, you're limiting your um that ability just to connect, like I said, whether that's one way or the other.
Hmm.
Connection is connection. It doesn't matter
Connection
which
is
direction
connection.
is going in.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if I'm giving 90 and you're giving 10 or vice versa. It's still that human connection that we also crave. And
Yeah.
the other thing I would say is I cannot, my biggest pet peeve is when people say, I don't have friends. Pardon me. Pardon
How?
me. And whose fault is that?
Yeah.
Whose fault? You're at fault. A hundred
Yeah.
percent of the time, it's you.
Hmm.
Because number one, yes, you can go, well, I've heard people say, well, I always make friends with people and they always burn me. Well, why? It seems to me like you want a specific kind of friend, and that
Hmm.
specific kind of friend is not going to be a friend to you.
Yeah.
And there was a situation in my life where I remember looking around and going, basically, all my friends were not in church. And I remember being like, I need a friend. And I remember being like, well, what do I do? And I
Hmm.
looked for someone who needed a friend.
There you go.
And when I tell you, her and I grew up together. We were always really close. And then for a few years, we kind of like, went our separate ways, but kind of like
I get. Yeah. I
weren't
got you.
as close. And then I remember being like, I'm going to reconnect with her. And let me tell you, she's one of my best, 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 best friends to this day. Like, I love her to death. And I'm so thankful that I didn't close my mind off to being like, I have no friends. There's no one around. There's a verse in the Bible. My bishop always preached that whatever you need in your life, there's always like the major things in life always go back to the Bible. They always go back
Oh,
to the Bible.
100%.
Even
Yeah.
things that you don't think are so important, like friendship, because people go, oh, I don't need a friend, I'm my lone soldier, blah 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 blah. Yeah, you do. You need a little somebody. Okay.
Every single person needs
There's
somebody.
Proverbs 18. 24 says, A
Mm-hmm.
man that hath friends must show himself friendly, and there is a friend that sticketh closer than a brother. So,
Yeah.
how do you find a friend? You don't just sit there and hope that someone comes and decides to be your bosom buddy. You got to go out there and make yourself friendly.
Yeah.
You have to.
You have to.
That's what I have. That's all.
That was good. I would have paid for that. That was some good stuff. But that is you even dropped a scripture in there. My God. Someone get her a hanky.
Hallelujah.
My mom used to preach that scripture to us.
Mm.
Not the elbow. I hope you guys are watching this on YouTube because whew, there it goes. No, my mom used to preach that scripture to me all the time. You know Karen Anderson, so you know what I'm talking about when she'd be like, girls, you can't just expect people to come up and want to be your friend. You have to go out and meet them.
But that's so beautiful. What a beautiful testament to that.
It is.
You know, like that your mom told you that for years, and look at you now. Literally, you have a podcast based on this subject.
Yeah. I really think it stems from that.
Yes. That's amazing.
You know, I feel very blessed to come from the family that I do, and it was always very, you know, supportive and things that I know people don't have that.
Yeah.
But like that's the whole reason for Friendeavor is to take what I've learned, what other people have learned who can contribute to people's lives and give it a platform that it deserves, because there are people who are lonely.
Yep.
There are people who come from small churches. There are people who don't know where to start. And getting friendships and building friendships and even developing themselves. Like there's this subcategory of Friendeavor that's self-development through our books and stuff that we've released. And that's what this is about. So I am deeply, deeply grateful that you came on the podcast today. Taking time out of your evening. I know you have something that you need to get to. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And I really thank you for the friend that you've been to me all these years. I don't have exact date of when we met, but I do know that you've made quite an impact on my life, and I'm looking forward to many, many more years of friendship with you.
Oh, that's so kind, Danielle. You are genuinely an absolute gem. You have been always just so positive, so lovely to be around. You always make me laugh. And you are one of the funniest people I also know. So
Someone get me a crown. That is the highest compliment.
Truly. It really is, isn't it? But I mean it. Like, you genuinely are just hilarious. And I'm so proud of you for doing this and doing it well and talking about this, because to me it is a very important topic. And you know, it's so neat that someone can go onto this podcast, take a listen, and then hopefully get advice from all of the podcasts that you've put out. And so it's really incredible to see, and I'm just so proud of you. I really am.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on here. I loved it. It was so fun.
You got to come back sometime. We have to have like some like super panel with you and Monique and all these friends who are just hilarious, and let it just be
would be wild. Oh my god.
Just a yap fest. That's what we can call it. Yap Fest 2025.
But love that. It would be amazing.
Thank you so much for listening this week. Don't forget, if you've got questions, comments, concerns, or if you have any feedback on what we talked about today, you can email us friendeavorpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much, Pauline, and we hope that you guys have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Friendeavor the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you enjoyed today's content, leave a review and share with a friend. You can find the show notes on our website, www.friendeavor.net, and in the description of this episode.
Friendship is a journey. It's an endeavor. We'll see you next time on Friendeavor.